A 9-year-old girl living on the street found a lawyer's wallet full of money. But when she tried to return it, Lily's small hands trembled as she clutched the leather wallet she just found. The alley was dark and damp, but even in the dim light, she could see the crisp edges of $100 bills peeking out. Her heart raced with a mixture of excitement and fear. This was more money than she'd ever seen in her life. For a moment, she allowed herself to imagine what this could mean. Warm meals, new shoes, maybe even a roof over her head. But then reality crashed back in. This wasn't her money. Someone had lost it. Someone who might be looking for it right now. As sirens wailed in the distance and the shadows grew longer, Lily knew she had to make a decision. Keep the wallet and change her life, or try to find its rightful owner. At 9 years old, living on the unforgiving streets of New York, it was a choice no child should have to make. Lily huddled deeper into her oversized, tattered coat, her eyes darting nervously around the alley. The wallet felt heavy in her pocket, like a secret burning to be told. She needed to think, figure out what to do, but the growling of her empty stomach made it hard to concentrate. It had been 3 days since she'd had a proper meal. The local shelter had been full, and the usual dumpsters she scavenged from had been emptier than usual. Winter was approaching, and Lily knew that soon, the bitter cold would make her life on the streets even more dangerous. As she contemplated her next move, a gust of wind blew a discarded newspaper against her feet. The front page caught her eye, a photo of a distinguished-looking man in a suit with the headline, "Top Lawyer Wins Landmark Case." Lily's eyes widened as she recognized the face. It was the same one on the driver's license in the wallet she'd found. The article praised the lawyer, Jonathan Blackwell, for his pro bono work and dedication to social justice. Lily felt a pang of guilt. This man seemed to help people like her, and here she was, considering keeping his lost wallet. But the temptation was strong. With this money, she could buy food, maybe even rent a room for a while. It could be her ticket off the streets, away from the constant fear and hunger. As she debated with herself, an old memory surfaced. Her mother's voice, warm and gentle, telling her that honesty was always the best policy. The thought of her mother brought tears to Lily's eyes. It had been 2 years since she'd lost her. 2 years since her world had fallen apart. Wiping her eyes with a grimy sleeve, Lily made her decision. She would try to return the wallet. But how? She couldn't just walk into some fancy law office. They'd probably call the police as soon as they saw her. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the alley, Lily knew she needed to find a safe place to sleep for the night. Tomorrow, she would figure out how to return the wallet. For now, she clutched it close, both a temptation and a responsibility, as she set off to find a sheltered spot for the night. Little did Lily know, her decision would set in motion a chain of events that would change not only her life, but also the life of the renowned lawyer in ways neither could have imagined. As Lily curled up in a hidden nook behind a dumpster, her usual sleeping spot, her mind drifted back to the life she once had. The home she'd lost. 2 years earlier, 7-year-old Lily bounced excitedly on the balls of her feet as she waited for her mother to finish getting ready. It was career day at school, and her mom had promised to come and talk about her job as a nurse. "Mom, we're gonna be late," Lily called, her pigtails swinging as she peered into the small bathroom of their modest apartment. Sarah Jenkins emerged, adjusting her nurse's uniform with a tired smile. "Sorry, sweetie. Night shift was tough last night, but I'm ready now. Let's go knock 'em dead at career day, shall we?" Lily beamed, grabbing her backpack and her mother's hand. As they walked to school, Lily chattered away about her friends and her classes, while Sarah listened attentively, occasionally stifling a yawn. Life wasn't easy for the Jenkins women. Sarah worked long hours as a nurse to keep a roof over their heads and food on the table. Lily's father had never been in the picture, leaving before she was born. But despite the challenges, they had each other, and that was enough. Career day was a success. Lily swelled with pride as her classmates listened in awe to her mother's stories about saving lives in the ER. For a moment, all was right in Lily's world. Fate had other plans. It started with a cough, just a small one at first, barely noticeable. But over the weeks, it grew worse. Sarah tried to hide it from Lily, not wanting to worry her daughter. But Lily noticed the way her mother's scrubs hung looser on her frame, the dark circles under her eyes that no amount of concealer could hide. One night, Lily woke to the sound of violent coughing. She crept to her mother's room to find Sarah hunched over, tissue pressed to her mouth, becked with blood. "Mom?" Lily's voice trembled with fear. Sarah looked up, face pale in the moonlight. "It's okay, sweetie. Mommy's just got a bit of a cold. Go back to bed." But it wasn't okay. The next day, Sarah collapsed at work. The diagnosis came swiftly and mercilessly: advanced lung cancer. The prognosis was grim. The next few months were a blur of hospital visits, hushed conversations with doctors, and mounting bills. Sarah tried to keep working as long as she could, but eventually the illness won out. Lily spent her days at school and her evenings at the hospital, doing homework by her mother's bedside. Despite the pain and the fear, Sarah always had a smile for her daughter. "You're the best thing that ever happened to me, Lilybug," she'd say, stroking Lily's hair. "No matter what happens, always remember how much Mommy loves you." On a cold autumn morning, just 2 months shy of Lily's 8th birthday, Sarah Jenkins took her last breath. Lily, curled up in a chair beside the hospital bed, woke to the sound of the flatline alarm. In that moment, her world shattered. With no other family to take her in, Lily became a ward of the state. She was placed in a group home, pulled, institutional place that felt nothing like the warm apartment she'd shared with her mother. The other kids were rough, hardened by their own traumas. Lily withdrew into herself, rarely speaking, her grief a constant ache in her chest. Nights were the worst. Lily would lie awake, clutching the worn teddy bear her mother had given her, trying to remember the sound of Sarah's voice, the feeling of her hugs. Sometimes she'd cry silently into her pillow, careful not to wake the other girls in the room. As the months passed, Lily's despair turned to anger. She lashed out at the social workers, refused to participate in group activities, got into fights with the other children. Her once bright eyes became dull, her smile a distant memory. It was after one such fight, nursing a split lip and a bruised ego, Lily made the decision to run away. She couldn't bear another day in this place that wasn't home, surrounded by people who weren't her mother. Late one night, she stuffed her few belongings into her school backpack. Some clothes, her mother's nurse badge that she'd managed to keep, and her beloved teddy bear. With a skill born of desperation, she jimmied open a window and slipped out into the darkness. The streets of New York were terrifying at night, but to Lily, anything was better than the group home. She wandered aimlessly at first, jumping at every shadow, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. As dawn broke, Lily found herself in a park. Exhausted, she curled up on a bench and fell into a fitful sleep. When she woke, the reality of her situation began to sink in. She was alone, hungry, and had no idea what to do next. The first few days were the hardest. Lily quickly learned the harsh realities of life on the streets. She scavenged for food in dumpsters, learned to avoid the dangerous areas, and found relatively safe spots to sleep. Her mother's nurse badge became her most prized possession, talisman she clung to in her darkest moment. As weeks turned into months, Lily adapted to her new life. She became adept at blending in, at making herself invisible, to avoid the attention of well-meaning adults who might send her back to the group home. She found a community of sorts among the city's homeless population. Not friends exactly, but people who looked out for her in their own way. But no matter how she tried to harden herself, Lily couldn't quite shake the memory of her old life. In quiet moments, she'd take out her mother's badge, tracing the letters of Sarah's name with her finger. "I'm sorry, Mom," she'd whisper. "I'm trying to be brave, like you taught me." Now, 2 years later, as 9-year-old Lily huddled in her hiding spot with a stolen wallet, those memories came flooding back. What would her mother think of her now? Would she be disappointed? Or would she understand the impossible choices Lily had been forced to make? With these thoughts swirling in her mind, Lily drifted into an uneasy sleep. The wallet clutched tightly to her chest, a symbol of both temptation and hope. The months leading up to Lily's fateful discovery of the wallet had been particularly challenging. Winter was approaching, and each day brought new struggles for survival on the unforgiving streets of New York. Lily had developed a routine of sorts. She'd wake up at dawn before the streets got busy and make her way to a local bakery. The kind-hearted owner, Mrs. Rodriguez, would often slip her a day-old bagel or muffin when no one was looking. It wasn't much, but to Lily, it was a feast. "Ay, mi niña," Mrs. Rodriguez would say, her eyes filled with a mixture of pity and concern. "You should be in school, not out here on the streets." Lily would just shrug, mumble a thank you, and hurry away. She knew Mrs. Rodriguez meant well, but school was a luxury she couldn't afford. Besides, the thought of returning to a system that had failed her so badly filled her with dread. After breakfast, Lily would spend her mornings collecting cans and bottles to exchange for small change. It was tedious work, and the meager earnings barely covered her basic needs, but it gave her a sense of independence. In the afternoons, she'd often find herself in the public library. It was warm, safe, and best of all, free. She'd lose herself in books, escaping into worlds far removed from her harsh reality. Sometimes, she'd catch sight of her reflection in the library windows. A small, dirty girl with haunted eyes and barely recognize herself. One librarian, a gentle older man named Mr. Patel, had taken notice of Lily's frequent visits. He never asked about her situation, but he'd often recommend books he thought she might enjoy. "You remind me of my granddaughter," he told her one day. "She loves to read too." Lily had just nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Kindness in Mr. Brace, Patel's eyes reminded her too much of her mother, bringing a lump to her throat. As the days grew colder, Lily's situation became more desperate. The thin jacket she'd taken from the group home was no match for the biting wind. She'd taken to spending nights in the subway, huddled in a corner of a less-used station. It was dangerous, but at least it was warmer than the streets. It was during one of these nights that Lily had her closest call yet. She'd been dozing fitfully when a hand grabbed her arm, yanking her awake. A man with wild eyes and alcohol on his breath loomed over. "What have we got here?" he slurred, pawing at her backpack. "What you got for me, little girl?" Terror gripped Lily's heart, but survival instincts kicked in. She twisted out of his grasp and ran, her small size allowing her to weave through the sparse late-night crowd. She didn't stop running until she was several blocks away, her lungs burning and tears streaming down her face. After that incident, Lily became even more cautious. She changed her sleeping spots frequently, never staying in one place for too long. The constant vigilance was exhausting, but she knew the alternative could be much worse. As winter set in earnest, Lily's options dwindled further. Many of her usual scavenging spots were covered in snow, and fewer people were out on the streets, meaning less opportunity for panhandling. Hunger became a constant companion, a gnawing ache in her belly that never quite went away. It was during this time of increasing desperation that Lily began to consider options she'd previously thought unthinkable. She'd watch people in cafes and restaurants, imagining how easy it would be to snatch an unattended purse or wallet. The guilt these thoughts brought was almost as painful as the hunger, but survival was becoming harder with each passing day. One particularly cold afternoon, about a week before she found the lawyer's wallet, Lily hit rock bottom. She hadn't eaten in 2 days, and her usual spots had yielded nothing. Desperation drove her to do something she'd never done before. She stole an apple from a street vendor's cart. The rush of adrenaline as she ran away, clutching her prize, was quickly replaced by overwhelming shame. As she bit into the apple, tears mixing with the sweet juice, Lily felt as though she'd crossed a line. What would her mother think of her now? That night, huddled in an alley and still hungry despite the stolen apple, Lily took out her mother's nurse badge. She traced the letters of Sarah's name, remembering her mother's words. "Always do the right thing, Lilybug, even when it's hard." Lily made a promise to herself then. No matter how hard things got, she wouldn't steal again. She'd find another way. Her mother had raised her better than that. It was just a few days later that fate intervened, placing the lost wallet in Lily's path. As she stood in that alley, holding more money than she'd ever seen, Lily was faced with the ultimate test of her resolve. The temptation was almost overwhelming. With this money, she could buy food, warm clothes, maybe even a bus ticket to somewhere warmer. It could be her ticket off the streets, away from the constant fear and hunger. But as she stood there, her mother's badge a weight in her pocket, Lily knew what she had to do. It wouldn't be easy, but she would find a way to return the wallet. It was what her mother would have wanted. As Lily made her way to her sleeping spot that night, the wallet secure in her pocket, she felt a strange mix of emotion. Fear of what the coming days might bring, pride in her decision to do the right thing, and a tiny spark of hope that maybe, just maybe, this could be the start of something better. Little did she know, her decision would set in motion a chain of events that would change her life in ways she could never have imagined. The morning after finding the wallet, Lily woke with a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in months. She had a mission now, to return the wallet to its rightful owner, the renowned lawyer, Jonathan Blackwell. As she made her way through the awakening city, Lily's mind raced with possible scenarios. How would she approach the lawyer's office? Would anyone even believe her if she said she'd found the wallet? The thought of walking into a fancy law firm, dirty and disheveled as she was, made her stomach churn with anxiety. Lily's first stop was the public library. Mr. Patel greeted her with his usual warm smile as she slipped in, heading straight for the computers. With shaky fingers, she typed Jonathan Blackwell, lawyer, into the search bar. The results were overwhelming. News articles praising his pro bono work, interviews discussing his high-profile cases, and finally, the address of his law firm. Lily jotted down the address on a scrap of paper, her heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and fear. As she left the library, Lily caught sight of her reflection in the window. Her hair was matted, face smudged with dirt, and her clothes were little more than rags. How could she possibly walk into a prestigious law firm looking like this? With a sigh, Lily decided to use a small portion of the money in the wallet to make herself presentable. It felt wrong, but she reasoned that she needed to look somewhat respectable if she had any hope of being taken seriously. She bought a cheap outfit from a discount store and used a public bathroom to clean up as best she could. Looking at her reflection in the grimy mirror, Lily barely recognized herself. Clean clothes and washed face made her look almost like a normal kid again, but her eyes still held the wariness of someone who had seen too much. With a deep breath, Lily set off towards the address of Blackwell's law firm. As she walked, the wallet felt heavier in her pocket, a constant reminder of the choice she was making. Part of her still whispered that she could turn back, use the money to change her life. But the memory of her mother's teachings kept her feet moving forward. The law firm was housed in a towering skyscraper. It made Lily feel smaller than ever. She stood outside for several minutes, gathering her courage. People in expensive suits rushed past her, barely sparing her a glance. Finally, with a deep breath, she pushed through the revolving door. The lobby was all marble and glass, intimidatingly clean and quiet. A security guard at the desk eyed her suspiciously as she approached. "Can I help you?" he asked, his tone making it clear that he doubted she had any business there. Lily swallowed hard. I need to see Mr. Blackwell. Jonathan Blackwell. I found his wallet." The guard's eyebrows rose. "Mr. Blackwell is a very busy man. Do you have an appointment?" Lily shook her head, feeling her cheeks burn with embarrassment. "No, but it's important. Please, I just want to return his wallet." The guard looked skeptical but picked up his phone. After a brief conversation, he looked back at Lily. "Take the elevator to the 30th floor. Someone will meet you there." Heart pounding, Lily stepped into the elevator. As it rose, she couldn't help but think about how different her life was from the people who worked in this building. Would they look at her with disgust? Pity? Would they even believe her story? The elevator doors opened, and Lily found herself face to face with a young woman in a sharp suit. "I'm Mr. Blackwell's assistant," she said, her eyes widening slightly as she took in Lily's appearance. "I understand you have something for him?" Lily nodded, suddenly unable to speak. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the wallet, holding it out with trembling hands. The assistant took it, her professional demeanor slipping for a moment as she realized what she was holding. "Oh my, Mr. Blackwell has been looking everywhere for this. Where did you find it?" "On the street," Lily managed to say. I wanted to return it myself, to make sure it got back to him." The assistant's expression softened. "That's very honest of you. Why don't you come with me? I'm sure Mr. Blackwell will want to thank you personally." As Lily followed the assistant through the office, she felt out of place among the bustling lawyers and clacking keyboard. She could feel curious eyes on her, probably wondering what a kid like her was doing in a place like this. They stopped outside a large oak door. The assistant knocked and then ushered Lily inside. And there, sitting behind an imposing desk, was Jonathan Blackwell himself. He looked up as they entered, his piercing eyes immediately focusing on Lily. For a moment, she felt frozen, overwhelmed by the reality of finally meeting the man whose wallet had changed the course of her life. "Mr. Blackwell," the assistant said, "this young lady found your wallet and brought it back." Blackwell stood, his expression a mixture of surprise and curiosity. "Did she now?" said, his voice deep and authoritative. "Well, young lady, it seems I owe you a debt of gratitude." As Lily stood there, facing the renowned lawyer, she realized that this moment could change everything. But whether for better or worse, she couldn't yet tell. Jonathan Blackwell had not always been the successful, renowned lawyer he was today. Born into a working-class family in the Bronx, he had fought tooth and nail for every opportunity, working his way through law school on scholarships and part-time jobs. His experiences had shaped his worldview and his approach to law. He had become known for taking on pro bono cases for those who couldn't afford legal representation, fighting tirelessly for the underdogs of society. His office walls were adorned not with accolades, but with thank-you letters from clients whose lives he had changed. As he looked at the small, clearly nervous girl standing before him, Blackwell was reminded of his own childhood struggles. There was something in her eyes, a mix of fear and determination, that stirred a memory of his younger self. "Please, sit down," he said, gesturing to a chair. As Lily perched on the edge of the seat, Blackwell studied her more closely. Despite the clean clothes, he could see the signs of hardship. The too-thin frame, the wary set of her shoulders, old look in young eyes. "What's your name?" he asked, his tone gentler now. "Lily," he replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "Well, Lily, I can't tell you how grateful I am that you returned my wallet. There were some very important documents in there, not to mention a significant amount of cash. Many people would have been tempted to keep it." Lily's cheeks flushed. I thought about it," she admitted. "But my mom always taught me to do the right thing, even when it's hard." Blackwell's eyebrows rose. "Your mother sounds like a wise woman. Is she here with you?" The flash of pain that crossed Lily's face told Blackwell everything he needed to know. He had seen that look too many times in his line of work. The look of a child who had lost too much, too soon. "Lily," he said carefully, "can you tell me a bit about yourself? Where you live, for instance?" Lily hesitated, fear creeping back into her eyes. Blackwell recognized the look of someone afraid of the system, being sent back to a place they had fled. "It's okay," he assured her. "I'm not here to judge or to cause trouble. I just want to understand." As Lily began to speak, haltingly at first and then with increasing openness, Blackwell listened intently. With each word, he felt a growing conviction that this chance encounter was more than just a lost wallet. It was an opportunity to make a real difference in a child's life. As Lily's story unfolded, Jonathan Blackwell felt a mix of emotions wash over him. Anger at the system that had failed this child, admiration for her resilience, and a deep sense of responsibility to help. "Lily," he said when she had finished speaking, "what you've been through. No child should have to endure that. I want to help you, if you'll let me." Lily looked up at him, a flicker of hope in her eyes quickly replaced by suspicion. "Why would you want to help me? You don't even know me." Blackwell smiled sadly. "Because Lily, a long time ago, I was not so different from you. I know what it's like to feel alone, to struggle, and I've made it my life's work to help people who need it most." Paused, considering his next words carefully. "I have connections with child services. I could make sure you're placed in a good foster home, one where you'll be safe and cared for." The change in Lily's demeanor was immediate and dramatic. She stood up so quickly her chair nearly toppled over, her eyes wide with fear. "No, I won't go back into the system. You can't make me." Blackwell held up his hands in a placating gesture. Okay, I won't do anything you don't want. But Lily, you can't keep living on the streets. It's not safe." Lily's shoulders slumped, fight draining out of her. "I know," she whispered, But I don't know what else to do. I can't go back to the group home. Just can't. Blackwell felt his heart breaking for this brave, vulnerable child. He knew he couldn't in good conscience let her go back to the streets. But he also knew that forcing her into a system she feared would only cause more harm. As he pondered the dilemma, an idea began to form. It was unconventional, possibly even crazy, but it felt right. "Lily," he said slowly, "what if I told you there might be another option? One that doesn't involve the foster care system, at least not right away." Lily looked at him warily. "What kind of option?" Blackwell took a deep breath. "My wife and I, we've been talking about becoming foster parents for a while now. We've gone through most of the certification process. What if you came to stay with us? Just temporarily while we figure out a more permanent solution." The words hung in the air between them. Lily stared at him, her expression a mix of disbelief, cautious hope. "You'd do that? For me?" Blackwell leaned forward, his voice earnest. "Because you deserve a chance, Lily, a real chance at a better life. And because by returning that wallet, you showed me that despite everything you've been through, you still have a strong moral compass. That's rare, and it should be nurtured." Lily bit her lip, clearly torn. "I don't know. What if it doesn't work out? What if your wife doesn't like me?" "Eleanor has a bigger heart than anyone I know," Blackwell assured her. "And if it doesn't work out, we'll find another solution together. I promise I won't send you back to the streets or to a place where you feel unsafe. What do you say? Will you give it a try?" For a long moment, Lily was silent, her young face a battlefield of emotions. Then, slowly, she nodded. "Okay," she said softly. "I'll try." Blackwell felt a wave of relief wash over him. "Good. That's good, Lily. Now why don't we get you something to eat while I make some calls? I think we both have a lot to process." As he picked up his phone to call his wife, Blackwell marveled at how a simple lost wallet had led to this moment. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be legal hurdles to overcome, trust to be built, and a lot of healing to be done. But looking at Lily, seeing the first genuine smile on her face since she'd entered his office, he knew it was worth it. This was why he had become a lawyer in the first place. Make a real difference in people's lives. As he dialed Eleanor's number, Blackwell silently vowed to do everything in his power to give Lily the second chance she deserved. The wallet she had returned had contained money and documents, yes, but her honesty in returning it had given him something far more valuable, the opportunity to change a life. As Jonathan waited for Eleanor to arrive at his office, he took the opportunity to learn more about Lily. With gentle questioning, he began to piece together the full extent of her situation. Lily, feeling more at ease now that the immediate threat of being sent back to the group home passed, opened up further. She told him about her mother's job as a nurse, about the long hours Sarah had worked to provide for her daughter. She spoke of the fun they'd had together, despite their limited means. Picnics in the park, movie nights with homemade popcorn, bedtime stories every night without fail. When she got to the part about her mother's illness, Lily's voice faltered. Blackwell listened with a heavy heart as she recounted the rapid decline, the mounting medical bills, final days in the hospital. "She tried so hard to hide how sick she was," Lily said, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "She didn't want me to worry, but I knew. I could see it in her eyes." Blackwell felt a lump form in his throat. He thought of his own daughter, safe at home with Eleanor, and couldn't imagine the pain of knowing you were leaving your child alone in the world. As Lily continued her story, detailing her experiences in the group home and her decision to run away, Blackwell's legal mind began to work. There were protocols that had clearly been violated, oversights that had allowed a vulnerable child to slip through the cracks of the system. "Lily," he said gently when she had finished, "what happened to you should never have happened. The system that was supposed to protect you failed. I want you to know, it's not your fault. None of this is your fault." Lily looked up at him, her eyes wide and vulnerable. "Really? Sometimes I think, if I had been better, if I hadn't caused so much trouble in the group home." "No," Blackwell said firmly. "You were a child in pain, dealing with an unimaginable loss. The adults in charge should have recognized that and gotten you the help you needed." Just then, there was a knock at the door. Eleanor Blackwell entered, kind face etched with concern. She took in the scene, her husband's serious expression, a small girl curled up in the oversized chair, and immediately understood that something significant was happening. "Eleanor," Jonathan said, standing to greet his wife. "This is Lily. Lily, this is my wife, Eleanor." Eleanor's face softened as she looked at Lily. "Hello, Lily. It's very nice to meet you." Lily mumbled a shy hello, brinking back in her chair. Jonathan quickly filled Eleanor in on the situation, watching as his wife's expression changed from confusion to understanding, determination. When he had finished, Eleanor knelt down in front of Lily's chair. "Lily, sweetie, Jonathan tells me you need a safe place to stay for a while. Would you like to come home with us? We have a spare room, and I make a mean chocolate chip pancake." Lily looked from Eleanor to Jonathan and back again, as if searching for some sign that this was too good to be true. You really want me to stay with you?" "We really do," Eleanor assured her. "It might take some getting used to for all of us, but we'd be honored to have you in our home." For the first time since she'd entered the office, Lily's face broke into a genuine smile. It transformed her features, making her look like the child she was supposed to be, rather than the wary, old-before-her-time girl they had first encountered. As they prepared to leave the office, Jonathan pulled Eleanor aside. "There's going to be a lot of legal work to sort this out," he murmured. "And Lily's been through so much, it won't be easy." Eleanor squeezed his hand. "I know. But look at her, Jonathan. She deserves a chance at a real childhood. We can give her that." Jonathan nodded, feeling a surge of love for his compassionate wife. As they gathered their things and headed out, he couldn't help but marvel at how a simple lost wallet had led to this moment. He had no idea what challenges lay ahead, but he was certain of one thing: their lives would never be the same again. The first few weeks of Lily living with the Blackwells were a period of adjustment for everyone involved. Lily, unused to the stability and comfort of a real home, often seemed overwhelmed. She would flinch at sudden movements, hoard food in her room, and wake up screaming from nightmare. Jonathan and Eleanor did their best to make her feel safe and welcome. They gave her space when she needed it, but also made sure she knew they were there for her. Slowly, Lily began to relax, trust that this wasn't some elaborate trick that would end with her back on the streets. Meanwhile, Jonathan threw himself into the legal aspects of Lily's situation. He discovered that there had indeed been several breaches of protocol in her case. The group home she had run away from had failed to report her missing for nearly 48 hours, and there was evidence of neglect and possibly even abuse during her time there. As he dug deeper, Jonathan uncovered a pattern of similar cases: vulnerable children falling through the cracks of an overburdened system. What had started as one child's story was turning into something much bigger. One evening, about a month after Lily had come to live with them, Jonathan sat her down for a serious conversation. "Lily," he began gently, "I've been looking into what happened to you, and I've found some troubling thing. I believe I can build a case that could change things, make the system better for other kids like you. But to do that, I'd need to use your story. You might have to talk to other lawyers, maybe even a judge. It wouldn't be easy, but it could help a lot of other children. What do you think?" Lily was quiet for a long moment, her brow furrowed in thought. When she finally spoke, her voice was small but determined. "If it would help other kids not go through what I did, I want to do it." Jonathan felt a surge of pride at her bravery. "Are you sure? It might mean talking about some difficult things." Lily nodded. "I'm sure. My mom always said we should help others when we can. I think she'd want me to do this." With Lily's agreement, Jonathan began to build his case. It was a monumental task, involving countless hours of research, interviews, and preparation. Eleanor stepped up, taking on more of Lily's day-to-day care to allow Jonathan to focus on the legal battle ahead. As the case progressed, word began to spread. Other lawyers joined the cause, bringing forward similar cases from their own practices. Child welfare advocates rallied around the effort, seeing it as a chance to push for much-needed reforms. The day of the hearing arrived, and the courthouse was packed. Journalists, activists, and concerned citizens filled the gallery. Lily, dressed in a new outfit Eleanor had bought for the occasion, sat between the Blackwells. her small hand clutching Jonathan's tightly. As Jonathan presented his case, laying out the systemic failures that had led to Lily's ordeal, the courtroom was silent. He spoke of overworked social workers, underfunded programs, and a system that too often prioritized bureaucracy over the well-being of children. Then came the moment they had all been dreading and preparing for. Lily's testimony. As she took the stand, looking tiny and vulnerable in the large witness box, Jonathan felt his heart race. They had practiced this, but he knew how difficult it would be for her to recount her experiences in front of so many strangers. Lily's voice was shaky at first, grew stronger as she spoke. She told of her mother's death, the loneliness and fear in the group home, her desperate decision to run away. She described life on the streets, the hunger, cold, constant danger. There wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom as she recounted how she'd clung to her mother's nurse badge, her last connection to the life she'd lost. When the opposing counsel began their cross-examination, Jonathan tensed. But Lily held her ground, her responses clear and honest. When asked why she hadn't sought help from authorities, her answer was simple and heartbreaking. I didn't think anyone cared. As Lily stepped down from the witness stand, Jonathan saw the judge discreetly wipe away a tear. He knew then that regardless of the legal outcome, Lily's story had made an impact. The case stretched on for days, with expert witnesses testifying about the flaws in the child welfare system and the long-term impacts of childhood trauma. Throughout it all, Lily remained strong, drawing strength from the Blackwells' unwavering support. Finally, it was time for the judge to make her ruling. The courtroom was hushed. She began to speak. In all my years on the bench, the judge began, I have rarely encountered a case that has moved me as deeply as this one. The failures that led to young Lily's ordeal are not just legal or systemic. They are moral failures that we, as a society, must address. She went on to outline a series of mandated reforms, increased funding for child welfare programs, better training for social workers, stricter oversight of group homes, and improved support systems for children aging out of foster care. Furthermore, the judge continued, I am recommending a full investigation into the group home from which Lily fled, with potential criminal charges to follow. No child should ever feel that life on the streets is preferable to the care we provide. As the judge concluded her ruling, the courtroom erupted in applause. Jonathan felt a wave of emotion wash over him. Relief, joy, and an overwhelming sense of accomplishment. Turned to Lily, who was beaming through her tears. We did it, he said, pulling her into a hug. You did it, Lily. You've helped so many other children with your bravery. As they left the courthouse, they were met by a sea of reporters and well-wishers. Lily shrank back, overwhelmed by the attention, but Jonathan put a protective arm around her shoulders. Mr. Blackwell, one reporter called out, what's next for Lily? Jonathan looked down at the girl who had changed his life in so many ways. In that moment, he made a decision that had been forming in his heart for weeks. Well, he said, his voice thick with emotion, if Lily agrees, the next step will be making her a permanent part of our family. Eleanor and I would like to adopt her. Lily's head snapped up, her eyes wide with disbelief and hope. Really? She whispered. You want to adopt me? Jonathan knelt down to her level, oblivious to the cameras flashing around them. More than anything, he said. What do you think, Lily? Would you like to be a Blackwell? Lily's response was to throw her arms around Jonathan's neck, hugging him tightly. Yes, cried. Yes, please. As Jonathan stood, lifting Lily into his arms, the crowd around them cheered. Eleanor joined them, wrapping her arms around both Jonathan and Lily, completing their family circle. In that moment, surrounded by the love of her new family and the knowledge that her suffering had led to positive change, Lily felt truly at peace for the first time since losing her mother. She had found not just a home, but a purpose. And it had all started with a lost wallet and a little girl's decision to do the right thing. In the months that followed the landmark court case, the effects of the ruling began to ripple through the child welfare system. Group homes were subjected to stricter oversight, funding was increased for foster care programs, and new training protocols were implemented for social workers. For Lily, life with the Blackwells continued to be a journey of healing and growth. The adoption process moved forward, with Jonathan leveraging his legal expertise to navigate the complexities of the system. There were home visits, interviews, and mountains of paperwork. But through it all, the bond between Lily and her new family grew stronger. Lily started attending therapy sessions to work through her trauma. It wasn't easy. There were days when the weight of her past felt overwhelming. But with the unwavering support of Jonathan and Eleanor, she began to heal. Slowly, the nightmares became less frequent, and she started to feel more comfortable in her new life. School was another challenge. Lily had missed so much during her time on the streets that she struggled to catch up. But her innate intelligence, coupled with her newfound determination, saw her making rapid progress. Eleanor spent hours helping her with homework, and Jonathan hired tutors to fill in the gaps in her education. As Lily's confidence grew, so did her desire to help others. She started volunteering at a local shelter for homeless youth, sharing her story and offering hope to kids who were going through similar struggle. Her experiences gave her a unique perspective, and she quickly became a favorite among both the staff and the young residents. Jonathan, inspired by the case, shifted the focus of his legal practice. He took on more pro bono cases involving child welfare, becoming a vocal advocate for reform. His work began to attract national attention, and he was invited to speak at conferences and consult on policy changes. Eleanor, seeing the positive impact of their experience with Lily, decided to become a certified foster parent. She wanted to provide a safe haven for other children in need, even if only temporarily. The Blackwell home became a place of warmth and healing for a succession of foster children, with Lily often serving as an understanding big sister figure. On a bright spring day, almost a year after Lily had first walked into Jonathan's office with his lost wallet, the adoption was finalized. Courtroom was filled with friends, family, and many of the people who had been touched by Lily's story. As the judge pronounced Lily officially a Blackwell, the little girl who had once been alone on the streets found herself surrounded by love and support. She looked up at Jonathan and Eleanor, her new parents, with tears of joy in her eyes. "I have a family again," she whispered. Jonathan knelt down and hugged her tightly. "You always will, sweetheart, always." As they left the courthouse, Lily holding tight to both Jonathan and Eleanor's hands, they were met by a group of children from the shelter, where Lily volunteered. Kids cheered and waved signs congratulating their friend. Lily beamed at them, feeling a sense of purpose she had never known before. She had not only found a new family, but a calling, to be a voice for children who had none, a fight for those who couldn't fight for themselves. As they drove home for a celebration with their extended family and friends, Lily reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From the depths of despair on the streets to the joy of this moment, it had all started with a simple act of honesty, returning a lost wallet. In that moment, Lily silently thanked her mother. She had kept her promise to always do the right thing, even when it was hard. And that decision had led her to a new life, a new family, and a future bright with possibility. 5 years after the adoption, Lily Blackwell stood at a podium, addressing a room full of lawmakers and child welfare advocates. At 14, she had become a powerful voice for foster care reform, her personal story lending weight to her passionate argument. Jonathan and Eleanor sat in the front row, bursting with pride, as they watched their daughter speak with confidence and conviction. Lily had come so far from the scared, hungry child they had first met. As Lily concluded her speech, calling for continued improvements to the system that had failed her and so many others, the room erupted in applause. She smiled, her eyes finding her parents in the crowd. Later that evening, as the Blackwell family sat around their dinner table, Lily fingered the old nurse's badge she now wore on a chain around her neck. "Do you think Mom would be proud of me?" she asked softly. Jonathan reached over and squeezed her hand. "I know she would be, sweetheart, just as proud as we are." Lily smiled, looking around at the family she had found and the life she had built. From a lost wallet to a loving home, her journey had been extraordinary. But she knew it wasn't over. There were still children out there who needed help, and Lily Blackwell was determined to be there for them, just as the Blackwells had been there for her.